This video is about week 14 after my midfoot fusion and bone graft for a Lisfranc dislocation. In this video, I am talking about the general things I was working on that week, as well as talking about how each day was. I hope that this video will be helpful for those of you who are going through foot injuries and surgery to help reassure you if you're nervous about what to expect, or that it might also be helpful for those of you who are interested in learning what it's like to recover from foot surgery. What I was working on during week 14 included the following things. I was working on being able to walk for up to 10 minutes at a time with a walking boot on concrete. I was continuing on strengthening exercises at physical therapy. I was going to the gym more regularly, at least twice a week. I had my follow-up appointment with my doctor midway through week 14 on October 31st. He let me know that I could start transitioning out of the boot with the help of my physical therapist and start walking around the house without the walking boot as tolerated. And as I started transitioning out of the walking boot at home, I learned that it was going to be more difficult than I had imagined it was going to be. I had to start with having the walking boot off for brief periods of time and started walking with my crutches and gradually worked towards without the crutches, without the walking boot. It also took me 3 days to remember how to walk naturally with both feet and how to recenter my center of gravity, since I had gotten so used to having my center of gravity being a little off, since the walking boot made the right side of my body a little higher than the left for about 3 months with the walking boot on. Tuesday, October 29th, 2024, day 91 after my surgery. Matt and I met a couple of friends at trivia night. We had to park a couple of blocks away because there was a Halloween parade in the area. My foot tolerated the walk pretty well. Walking on concrete was slowly becoming easier and less painful, and I could start doing it for longer distances. Wednesday, October 30th, 2024, day 92 after my surgery. My mom took me to a doctor's appointment in the morning and we had lunch out together. I didn't need my crutches for walking around, which was pretty exciting. In the afternoon, my dad took me to physical therapy. Physical therapy continued to be difficult, but I always noticed a slight improvement in function within a day of sessions. Thursday, October 31st, 2024, day 93 after my surgery. I had my follow-up with my surgeon in the morning and had x-rays taken of my foot. My bones were not completely fused, but there was enough improvement since my last appointment that I could start transitioning out of the walking boot. I could start walking around the house without the walking boot as tolerated. A new script was sent to the physical therapist so that in addition to strengthening exercises, I would also work on walking in my sneakers without a limp in physical therapy. I was so excited to start transitioning out of the walking boot. The surgeon wanted me to schedule another appointment for in a month, so end of November. At home that day, I started practicing walking without the walking boot. I did have a limp because my foot felt so weird being outside of the walking boot, and I had to focus on walking naturally. I actually couldn't remember how I used to walk before without that foot, and forgot if I used to walk heel to toe or toe to heel. It also felt weird to be walking with both feet on the ground at the same height, since the walking boot had made the right side of my body a little taller, and I had gotten used to that going on for 3 months. I was finally starting to feel some hope about my injury improving for the first time since I had first been injured about 6 years ago. I knew that I still had a while to go in the recovery, but things were starting to finally feel more routine. Matt and I went to the gym that evening. I did wear the walking boot since the surgeon had recommended wearing the walking boot outside of the house until I started working with the physical therapist for walking outdoors in regular footwear. For the first time, I did not need the crutches at the gym. I also took a 10-minute walk outside with Matt without the crutches, and for the first time my foot did not hurt from walking on concrete. It was the first time I had been able to walk on concrete without pain since before the surgery. Friday, November 1st, 2024, day 94 after my surgery. I was still using the walking boot on and off around the house because walking without it for too long did make my foot hurt quite a bit, but it felt like my foot was getting used to walking without the boot. Sometimes I would use one crutch while walking without the walking boot to help me walk around without a limp. I went up and down the stairs a few times without the walking boot for the first time and used the railing for support. Sometimes my ankle cracked loudly while I was walking, but it wouldn't hurt when that happened. That evening, I walked down to a pizza place with my walking boot that's about a 5-minute walk away from my place to pick up a pizza, and it felt pretty easy coming back up the hill to walk back to my place. It was getting easier to walk on concrete with the walking boot and without crutches. Because of how long it had taken me to transition to full weight bearing, I was wondering how long it was going to take to fully transition out of the walking boot and feel comfortable with regular shoes. Saturday, November 2nd, 2024, day 95 after my surgery. My family and I all had a pancake brunch at my parents' house, and we had a ton of fun all being together. I did not walk as much that day without the walking boot at home, although I did still make an effort to do some walking without the boot. I had to use the crutch when I did have the walking boot off to help me walk without a limp. I'd noticed that my foot was starting to have trouble adjusting being out of the boot. Part of my issue was pain, but it also felt like my brain was automatically trying to avoid putting too much weight on my foot because it had been injured for so long. I was really trying not to get used to walking with a limp because I didn't want to get into that habit, and so using a crutch while I didn't have the walking boot on helped me not have the limp. On that particular day, my foot was not quite feeling like part of my body again, like it had for about a month or two after my surgery, and part of the issue was feeling like there was a lot of pressure in the middle of my foot where the fusion had taken place. Sunday, November 3rd, 2024, day 96 after my surgery. I was practicing walking slowly and intentionally in the house without the walking boot for a few minutes at a time to get my foot and ankle used to moving while walking, and also practicing balancing and walking without a limp. Since the walking boot controls foot and ankle movement while walking, I had to get used to getting all of the ankle and toe and foot movements to coordinate while walking to get a more natural gait again. It was harder than I thought it would be to get used to walking again without the walking boot, and it was also a bit more painful. I had to stretch my foot and ankle after walking each time because walking without the walking boot made my toes, foot, and ankle really stiff. I had figured that transitioning out of the walking boot was not going to be easy, but I didn't realize that it was going to take so much concentration and effort because I had been doing so well with walking in the boot lately. I was still walking and standing with the walking boot on more often than without it in the house, but it was helping to strengthen my foot and ankle to practice a little at a time without the walking boot. It was also a relief to know that I didn't have to put the boot back on every single time I wanted to get up anymore, because when I was sitting down I didn't like having the boot on since it was pretty uncomfortable to keep on for long periods of time. In the afternoon, I finally, without thinking, started walking naturally in the same way that I used to before the surgery, with both feet heel to toe. I wasn't sure why I had had such a mental block remembering how I used to walk before the surgery, but finally on the third day of transitioning out of the walking boot I remembered. I was struggling with not limping when I wasn't wearing the walking boot, even though there wasn't anything structurally wrong with my foot anymore. I was also still getting used to both of my legs being the same height again after having had the walking boot on for 3 months. It was funny to me that I had spent nearly 40 years walking, and then 3 months after my surgery that was enough to make something that I had been doing automatically for so long be something that I had to relearn all over again. It wasn't until that point that I had realized how much of a mental toll my injury and the surgery had taken on me. Matt and I went to the library to return some DVDs and also went to pick up some new material. We went to the gym and I was able to do a few different machines. I did the leg press at 15 pounds, the thigh machine at 100 pounds, and the bike for 8 minutes. It wasn't as much of a workout as I'm used to doing, but it was an improvement. Now that my general activity was increasing and my workouts were starting to be a bit better, I was starting to feel more emotionally stable as well as more physically in shape. Matt and I also went to Target to pick up a few things, so my foot was pretty painful and puffy by the time we got home, but it wasn't as painful as it would have been before the surgery. Of course, I wasn't nearly as active as I was before the surgery either, and I was curious to see how my foot was going to handle continuing increasing activity. I iced it as we ate dinner, and icing did help with the pain and the soreness. I did have to keep it elevated for a couple of hours and stretch my foot and big toe since it was painfully stiff. Monday, November 4th, 2024, day 97 after the surgery. I had physical therapy for the first time without my walking boot that day, which was super exciting. I wore my walking boot to walk from the car to the building and then changed into my sneaker when I got there. I have to wear gauze pads over my scar, or else the sneaker was very painful against the top of my foot where the scar is. I found that out when I tried the shoe on the night before just to make sure that my sneaker was still going to fit over my foot, since my foot was still pretty swollen a lot of the time. Doing physical therapy with a sneaker instead of a walking boot ended up being easier than I thought it was going to be. My foot did get very sore and painful about halfway through the session, but I was able to power through. The physical therapist measured my range of motion, said that I had regained full range of motion in my ankle, and she said that my foot strength was also good. I was able to do standing toe raises while standing on both legs, but could not do it on just the right leg alone. It felt like there was a block in the signal when my brain was telling my foot to do the toe raise when I was standing on just the right leg. The physical therapist said that it was because the calf muscles in that leg were not strong enough yet, and that I was going to need to do some work on strengthening that leg. I asked my physical therapist about walking out of the house without the walking boot on, and she said that I should be able to walk around comfortably inside the house without the walking boot all of the time before starting to leave the house without it on. Since I still needed to use the walking boot on at least some of the time at home, she recommended that I continued using the walking boot outside of the house for the time being. As you can see from the length of this video, this was a pretty busy week for me after my surgery. I hope that these videos are helpful for those of you who are going through surgery or injury recovery. Feel free to discuss in the comments below successes, challenges that you are having trying to recover from surgery or injuries, and I hope that you are all doing well. I'll see you all soon.